Cashmaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
This is another GeoGearHeads randomized episode where Daryl W4 and I talk over a whole slurry of subjects in a single show. I'm the bad cop here for the 59th episode, Randomize 10. You may notice I'm using my sexy Valentine's Day voice for this show.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's what I'd call it, but okay.
My wife didn't buy that either. Anyway, excuse my voice tonight, and I'll do my best to hold it together for this, one of my favorite types of shows, the randomized episode.
Yeah, I love these randomized shows, and we've got a bunch of good stuff tonight, including a conversation about the new Garmin GGZ format, feedback from last week's edition on UV, and more on the GeoGearHeads 2013 Traveler Race. Next week, we'll be talking about the Ontario Trails Project for episode 60, and you can watch us record that show live through Google Plus Hangout on Air. We have the link in the GeoGearHeads Google Plus stream, and we post the YouTube live stream link to Twitter. Join us live about 9:10 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, February 21st, which is 2:10 a.m. February 22nd GMT, so that's a little rough for most of you guys in Europe. You can always subscribe to the audio versions through a podcatcher, listen to the CashManiacs.com site, or you listen from, really, the CashManiacs.com site, or watch the live stream, or the live recorded videos that get streamed as they're recorded directly to YouTube.
So that's how you can hear us and even sometimes see us. But we also want to hear from you. We're on many of the social networks, so you can get in touch with us there. Or you can email us at geogearheads@cashmaniacs.com, or call us at 206-350-3647 and leave a voicemail. That's what this listener did.
Hello, Daryl W4 and the Bad Cop. This is Super Ted here from the UK. Just thought I'd give you a call and once again thank you for your show and say I very much enjoyed the Caching by UV Light GeoGearHeads episode with Team Voyager. Coincidentally, I was listening to it just before I did my first ever UV cache, actually, over the weekend, so that was quite a coincidence. I went off and bagged a cache called Spot to Spot, which is GC45B for Bravo, C for Charlie, A for Alpha, over here, just north of Coventry in the UK. The cache owner had done something quite clever, actually. He'd used his UV pen and written split the coordinates up into 3 and written them inside telephone boxes. I'm not sure if you have those in US. Our telephone boxes have doors on, so they're a bit more protected from the elements. As I think maybe in the US they're a bit more open and therefore may not quite be as suitable as the UK ones for this idea. But it was a nice idea, worked well. The only problem is, of course, when there's 2 or 3 telephone boxes in a row, it's a bit of a gamble to choose the right one to find out which box he's written the clues in, but got there in the end, even with the hindrance of having my dog with me at the time, and he wasn't overly keen on popping in and out of the telephone boxes all the time, but did get there, got the clues, and went to bag the cache, so that was nice, and nice to link that in with your episode and all the technical details of what's out there in the way of lights and pens, etc. So thanks very much for that, and keep up the good work, guys. Bye for now.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome. But we do have the telephone booths over here. Not so much as we used to. In fact, payphones are pretty much gone. But there was a certain very popular superhero that used those in some early comic books to change his secret identity.
Well, there's another, shall we use the term superhero, that uses those British telephone boxes, or one in particular. I think of Doctor Who.
Yeah, there's always that too, but that's not a US thing, that's the British thing.
It's on the Sci-Fi Channel. It's become US-ified.
Yeah, that's a global thing.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Okay. But you too can call and leave us a voicemail at 206-350-3647, or better yet, you can record an audio file and email that to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. If you'd rather type up your feedback or questions, that's great too. Send those by email or social media, and all of those social media links are available on the website. Jeep in Idaho sent us this through Google Plus and said, "How's this?" and he sent a link. "For a cool use of QR codes. This would be a really cool way to make a multi or puzzle cache." Now that link actually takes you to a HuffPo article that's showing, among other things, a picture of a tile QR code embedded in the pavement. Mm-hmm. And I believe that was in Brazil.
I think so, and that's a lot of work to make a QR code in tile and then be able to put it down in pavement. I mean, that's amazing to me.
Yeah, talking about some permanence there. Mm-hmm. But it's not the first time we've seen use of QR codes like this. One of the cities in North Carolina had done a little history tour, as I recall, using QR codes on signs. So we're starting to see a lot more of this stuff. I hope to see a lot more of it, and it is a great way to do things like multi-caches, but even more than that, I like the idea of using it to give more information. Things like statues, historic buildings, they're putting up the QR codes. Mm-hmm. And if you can take someone to that, and maybe get them a little bit more information, and heck, maybe that gives them another special clue to help figure out the puzzle a little bit quicker and a little bit easier.
Exactly. I like that idea. Just this week I went and looked for a Munzie, and the clue on the Munzie is it's big. Well, right in below the Munzie was a poster, large, it had to be 6 foot wide banner poster with a huge QR code on it. I'm like, no way, they didn't do that. I scanned it. No, it wasn't. It took me to the university website. Oh, but it was big.
Yeah, that's definitely big, but that would be very cool. The only one that I can think of that's that big was the one that Munzie themselves had actually posted on, which was like an auto customizing shop or something like that out on the West Coast that had it printed up on the side of their building.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool idea, though.
Yeah, I've always thought about re-roofing the house and somehow working a QR code into the roof of my house, since my house is nice and square.
Yeah, there you go. Now, we'd love to hear from you guys, anything that you've seen or heard with these multi-caches. We've had so many of the obvious ones, which is it's just a text note that has the coordinates. Sometimes it's a Google Map link that will take you there. But how are you guys actually using these, or how have you seen them used in a puzzle cache? Yeah, I'm thinking maybe you just do a traditional puzzle cache even and use a QR code to take you to hints to solve the puzzle. If you need additional help, go here.
You can put just straight text into a QR code. So
absolutely.
It doesn't have to take you to a website. It can just display straight text. So that could work at the location if you need an extra hint.
And as I think we've mentioned before, there is actually a geotag that allows you to send coordinates via QR codes. However, that is so not supported by most of the apps that read QR codes that you really do want to avoid that. It'd be great if everyone did support that, but unfortunately, there's so little support for it that you really have to avoid it.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, let's move on to some extra fun stuff, which is our GeoGearHeads 2013 Traveler Race. And we've been talking about this a little bit on and off for the last several shows, and even going back into last year. We finally got everything ready. It's starting on March 1st, so it's time to get your travelers ready to go and into the contest or into the race. It's not really a contest. We didn't expect to have any prizes when we started this out, but we have gotten some donations, and we invite anyone who wants to donate anything, a personal coin, a path tag, anything that you have that you'd like to pitch in, that'd be great. We have the information up on the website, But more importantly, we actually have a post on how to get your trackable into the race, and you can do multiple trackables too. So right when we started recording this episode, that went live onto the Cache Maniac site, and we'll link to it in the show notes here as well, so you can follow that link. And of course, when I'm done with this, I'm going to start posting that out on Twitter and on Google Plus, so that everyone can get in, because I really want everyone in on this race.
I think it's a lot of fun. Now, just to let you know, I followed those rules and put this trackable into the race. So I did that just tonight. So I've got my trackable ready to go, and it's good to go. The whole idea of a traveler race, I think, is just a lot of fun.
Well, and this one is really simple, because all we want it to do is meet as many different caches as it can. And the way that this is run is actually through the tb-run.com site, which we've talked about as well a couple of times.
Right.
And they've created a special race for us which tracks the number of unique cachers logging that trackable. So it doesn't matter how many logs they make, it's only one, but the more people you can get to discover that, the better you're going to do. And the whole point of this is we want your tip or your trick, and I actually did 2 of these myself. One of them was on the oh man, I just forgot both of them. Oh well. But I did 2 of my favorite tips that I had come across in the last couple of years, and put those on, one on each of those coins, and released each of those. And I have one more that I want to do that I'm not going to spill the beans on just yet, especially because I'm drawing a blank as to what that hint was as well. But we're out there trying to get as many of these hints out and spread around. Spread the word to your friends, even if they're not GeoGearHeads listeners. Have them join in the race. Set one free. It doesn't have to be a brand new traveler either.
No.
It can be a repurposed traveler. It can be a traveler that's already making its rounds. Just change the information, drop it in there, and all you need is that TB tracking number to put it into the tb-run.com traveler race page.
Exactly.
One little sticking point is it can't be on another tb-run race at the time. So that, if you have one that was in a different race through the site, you will not be able to activate that. And it's probably not a good idea to put one of your other race coins that's still in a race into this contest, or into this race, because they're probably conflicting missions.
Yeah, and they'll get extra tired. We don't want a tired geocoin out there. Hey, Daryl, I cheated. I went to the tb-run website and looked. Your tips are on Evernote and QR codes.
Oh, yes. And, I've still got to write up the QR code trick. But that's something I'm going to actually try to do for these, is actually put some inserts in there with the Discovery QR code. And I'm going to actually take mine and release them at an event.
Yeah, and it's discoveries as well as logs into a cache that count. It's just the unique number of geocachers that find it. Yeah,
it should be. We haven't actually run this type of race yet, and may have some issues with it. But discovery logs, we're assuming, will work just fine. And if not, we'll have to let you know and try to get that fixed right away. But
exactly.
We're really looking forward to this one. And we do want to make note here, the whole point of this is it is supposed to be a race. You are supposed to release them. Don't hold on to them and do discoveries only, please, because that kind of defeats the purpose. So, yeah, we've got 5, I think, in the race right now. Does that sound about right?
Let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we do.
Yeah, excellent. So it's coming along, and it hasn't even started yet. So March 1st through September 1st, I think it was, and again,
exactly. And that's 2 weeks from the date of this recording.
Yeah, and you've got plenty of time for these things to move around. Hopefully, they're not going to get lost. Don't forget that travelers do tend to go missing, so don't put anything out there that you really want to ever see again. But please get some tips out there. We're hoping that some of the people who log will share their tips as well, and we can get a great community exchange happening through this traveler race of tips and tricks, and there are so many good ones out there. So many people have submitted great tips and tricks already that would just be perfect. And we'll take some of those and probably highlight them on one of the future randomized shows too.
Exactly. We could toss one of those tips in and just in any format of show.
We could probably even do a whole show on it if we get enough
there you go.
people interested in doing it. So we'll look forward to that in the future. But let's move on now to an interview that I actually did with the host of the geocaching podcast, and he got a little bit more information about these new GGZ files coming in from Garmin. Podcast to join us for the show, but unfortunately we have scheduling conflicts, so we pre-recorded this little bit about the new file format for geocaches in that new set of Oregon units that Garmin announced. And we all thought it was a little bit weird with this GZZ format, or GGZ format.
GGZ.
Yeah, thank you very much. You went and actually emailed Garmin and got a little bit more information than we've seen from anyone else. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that email and what you found out?
Sure. Well, I simply asked a few different things because it got me thinking, what exactly is GGZ format? And so I was wondering, so I asked them a set of questions, and then I asked them, is it a whole new file format, a zipped GPX file? What are the advantages of this file format over a regular GPX file? And they said, good guesses. A GGZ is a zip file, but it contains I'm sorry, let me start that one over again. A GGZ file is a zip file that contains one or more GPX files, in addition to a file that contains metadata for each geocache in the file. This produces a smaller file because they're zipped. More importantly, the metadata file makes it possible to access the name, location, and key attributes of each cache without having to read all of the GPX files. The GGZ file, these letters are going to get me confused here. The GGZ file can be produced much faster than the GPX files, or they can be processed much faster than the GPX files. Booting with a new GGZ file will be much faster than booting with the same number of geocaches in the now GPX file. The GGZ file allows us to handle many more geocaches than we would have in the past. So let's talk about that a little bit, Daryl. I think that it's interesting to see because we can already zip GPX files, and lots of things already handled zipped GPX files. For instance, GSAC handles these zipped GPX files. So it kind of was interesting to me that they have this new file format. I think it's interesting that they put this metadata. It seems to me, just from the response that I heard back from them, that basically they're not going to process the whole file. They're just going to kind of store the location, the name, and key attributes of each of the caches without reading the whole GPX file. And so that way, it sounds to me like they can process it faster because you're not going to have as much information they're processing right away.
Right, and almost any of us know that the GPX files are just a text file. It's just XML.
Right.
So that does take quite a bit to go through and process and figure out what it is, especially the bigger those get. So my thought is probably all they're doing is using the GPX file for the actual data source, but they have that metadata file, whatever that might be, is really probably more like an index and does basic information. So maybe the cache name, its waymark ID, the GC or OC or whatever that would be, the actual coordinates, and probably a location, the file or whatever, where that could be found. So I would hope there's probably a little bit more information than that. But you think about it, if you're going to take just a very small number of attributes, including the location, obviously, drop that into a file and eliminate all that other stuff, that probably is going to make it a lot faster to parse.
Right. I mean, you're still going to have that same information there, and my guess is that the rest of that file, the information that can be in the GPX, because he did mention that it's just a zip GPX file, but then this extra metadata file in there too. So all of the information will be in there, and it'll be interesting to see because what kind of information that can take. One of the things that I did ask him is also will the other cache listing sites be able to use this file format, and also other GPS makers be able to read this file format also? And their response was the file format will be open, documented, and pretty straightforward, which, it kind of sounds like it's pretty straightforward, just a metadata. I'm interested to see more information on it, but this is what I got right now. And also, they won't be doing anything to restrict anyone else from producing or reading the GGZ files, which that's a good thing, because obviously it'd be interesting to see, especially with GSAC, to be able to export to and from GSAC, especially, because the GSAC information can get fairly big and fairly large, because GSAC itself adds a lot of other information there rather than just the straightforward GPX information that you get from Groundspeak. It adds its own set of extensions on the GPX file, and so it has a lot more information, which is good because you can use that in other different places. However, it does bloat the file a little bit, and so it'll be interesting to see how and if they implement this into GSAC also.
Well, and let's face it, if the way that this is working is what I think they are doing, which is you'd have one GGZ file or GGZ file for everything in that unit rather than having a bunch of little ones, and you might be able to do both, but I think really their goal is to eliminate a lot of the individual files.
Right, because it did sound like that it's a zipped file that has multiple, one or more GPX files.
Right.
So you could do, export your whole GSAC database. And this is in my thinking. I mean, obviously this is nothing official, but you could export your whole database. Whether that be because for myself, I've got a close to home location. I've got when I'm traveling someplace, I've got that location. My found caches. I have all these different databases that from what I understand with this, that I could make one GGZ file, and it has those separated out, but then also this metadata, which allows you to, I guess, make it smaller. And that's another thing I'm wondering too is are you stripping this information that's going to be in the metadata file? Are you stripping that out of the GPX file? Otherwise, it gets redundant and it makes the file bigger. Correct?
Well, no, because it is zipped. If it is a zip file, it's going to drastically reduce the size of just a plain text file. Text files are very inefficient.
True.
But the way that I'm thinking they're going to handle this is really targeted more for GSAC than for your Pocket Query, because your Pocket Query is limited to 1,000 caches. It's not that big a file. Maybe Groundspeak would offer something eventually that would say, okay, here's my day worth of GPX files available in a single GGZ file. But I think really this is going to be targeted for that GSAC set where you're taking 40 or 50,000 caches and loading them in. So in order to make that file more edible to the GPS, maybe GSAC is going to take those 50,000 files or caches and break it into 1,000 separate files within that GGZ, a separate 1,000 different GPX files with one metadata. So you get these tiny little GPX files that are much easier for the unit to handle.
Right, and I think that this is going to be an interesting case too, because so far we've seen, well, whatever Garmin does, it seems like it's been a little bit slow as a caching community as a whole to implement. With the opencaching.com, that implementation, people catch on and go with it a little bit, and then, not a whole lot. You see a little bit of implementation in Garmin or in GSAC, the ability to read these different files in there and export them to different things like that. But as far as a community as a whole, Groundspeak, we all know Groundspeak and Garmin's relationship has kind of been tainted here in the last few years. And so it'll be interesting to see what Garmin or what Groundspeak does with this file format to see if they implement it. I have a feeling that they're going to be, like what you said, at best slow to implement it.
Yeah, my guess is opencaching.com probably has the support already. I haven't actually had a chance to go and check recently, but my guess is they already have the support. It's already going to be working there. You're not going to see the format disappear.
No.
However, I don't think we're going to see any significant adoption until GSAC supports it, because that's going to be the critical keystone for everything else. Until GSAC supports it, my guess is we're not going to see really anyone else supporting that format either.
Well,
and the listing services themselves probably aren't terribly thrilled about the concept of letting out, well, not only the new, right now is a proprietary format that only works on one small line of GPSs.
Right, and I think that what you say is critical there too. I think that for GSAC to implement it, it'll be GPSBabble that needs to support it. So GPSBabble, once it's implemented, is easy for GSAC to write to that file format once they do that. And I think that you're right. I think that we'll see this little niche of applications. I think is where we're going to see this happen a lot more than hard units, physical GPS units. I think we'll see Geosphere looking for cache, other different applications, phone apps, be able to support this application or this file format whole lot quicker than we will other units. I have a hard time believing that DeLorme and other places like that are going to implement this file format that another GPS maker is creating.
I think there's a remote possibility that will happen, but again, I think we have to see the support for it in GSAC first. Once GSAC does that, we might see it ported to other manufacturers, but I think most likely is going to be Magellan, because they do seem to have an interest in large number of caches as a feature of their devices. That said, I wonder if Garmin is even going to be able to take the GGZ format back to some of the old devices. I have the feeling, because this is a zip file, some of their older processors aren't very likely to handle that.
Right. Now, one of the things I was curious about was, will this new Oregon be able to load GPX files? Because, that would be a good way to force other people to quickly adopt this file format is, require your GPS to load the new GGZ format, because then people would be screaming at the developers of these other programs to implement it. And they did say, yes, the new Oregon will still be able to load the GPX files just as the previous Oregons did. So that's good news for all of us people who are going to be looking to get this new Oregon.
Indeed, and if they didn't have that support, I think the probability of returns would have been very, very high.
Right, I agree.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and now we have a little bit more information about what that Garmin GGZ format is going to be, but we're certainly looking for a lot more information in the coming months.
Right.
And you guys can check us out at the geocachingpodcast.com, where we meet every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Live on Google+.
Let me correct you there. It's just geocachingpodcast.com, not the geocachingpodcast.com.
Yes, correct. Thank you very much. All right, so thank you again. That was really helpful. But we did contact Robert Leip, who you remember might have been on one of our previous shows, who's of GPSBabble, and he commented on that GPS track log article about the format from, what was that, about 3 or 4 weeks ago now.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and that comment reads, "As the creator of GPSBabble, I've been watching this for any actual information about this file format. I see lots of guessing, but no samples and no specification. Given how terribly they've been about making details of their files public in the past, GPI, GDB, MPS, RMS, they change for them frequently, etc. I have low hopes. .fit changes with each new model, it seems, and their SDK license makes it completely unusable in an open source project. Even when they do use open source formats like GPX, they tend to make a mess of them, doing things like putting route points in a Garmin extension instead of putting them in, or using 128-digit hex extensions instead of putting them numbers as attributes. Developer.garmin.com is a ghost town. I'd be delighted for them to actually produce an open specification that actually matches their implementation, or better yet, contribute/fund a GPSBabble module for it, but given their history, I'm not counting on it." So basically what he's saying is there's not likely to be support for GGZ in GPSBabble.
And GPSBabble's what feeds GSAC. So
Yeah, there's always the possibility that someone else is going to come out and do some work on it, but I don't see anyone actually doing anything if there's no spec, and this has been the problem that we kind of skated over in that conversation earlier. There's no spec on this new format. There's nothing out there. We're reading into it and we're guessing, but really don't have a whole lot of information. Yeah, I understand, I think, where they wanted to go with this and why they've done it, but it really doesn't seem like it's all that necessary.
I look at the metadata in the zip file as kind of like the index in a book. It allows you to quickly go and find what you're looking for. So if it can speed up the access of large GPX files, then maybe it'll be helpful.
Right. Well, that's exactly what I was kind of hinting at in there was, I'm thinking it's going to have the basic information it needs to put a cache icon on the screen and give it the basic information, and then tell the unit where to go from there, where to get the information. But even then, I just don't know that it's really necessary to do. Maybe it would be better to just go and do a full-out, all-out conversion on it or something like that, and turn it into something that's, truly a smaller, easier to parse file than just zipping it.
Right. I would think adding the layer of zip would actually slow things down. Yes, it makes it a quicker and easier file to transfer, but then you've got to do the de-zipping, the unzipping in the unit to get access to the files. That doesn't make sense to me.
Which is why I think a lot of their older units aren't likely to get the upgraded support for it, because if you don't have a processor that's fast or engineered to handle it, that's going to be quite the encumbrance. Don't forget, though, a lot of newer processors have special routines that do take care of encryption, decryption, and compression kind of stuff much, much quicker. So I would not be surprised if they've actually built something like that into their new units. But again, that I think is going to be tied more to the age of your unit. I'm hoping we'll see some support maybe ported to like the newer Montanas, maybe to the E-Trex, but I wouldn't, the new E-Trex 10, 20, 30s, but I wouldn't count on it. Time will tell for sure, but my guess is this is going to be something they're going to keep just on the new units, and I would think that anything new is going to support it as well.
Yeah, and a newer processor is going to have more power, is going to be able to do that easily. So I don't think the processing power is the issue, to be honest with you.
Well, I think going back...
going backwards it will be, but going forwards from this point on, it won't be an issue.
No. Well, it might be if they come out with some of the new lower-end units. And like the Phoenix, I would be amazed if that little watch is going to be able to support it.
Right.
And, why would you really want to? Because there's not a whole lot of room in there anyway. So, we'll have to keep our eyes out and see what it's going to be. No one that I know of has actually had a GGZ file yet. I still haven't had an option when I've logged in to get the GGZ with opencaching.com. However, I still can't get into opencaching.com right now because of some login issues.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, well, somehow I ended up with two different accounts because I have my Garmin account, and then when I logged into opencaching.com, my Garmin account didn't work, so there was a second account, and then that second account stopped working, and then my Garmin account got locked. So,
well, I probably shouldn't say it, but I don't think you're missing out on many caches.
Well, and that's the other problem is around here there aren't many caches.
Right.
And I think I've done, all of the caches that are around here I've done as gc.com caches. So that's getting into another conversation for another time, which is the relevance of some of these third-party sites. And I do know that in some areas, the opencaching.com site does have some adoption.
Right.
And in other areas, you'll find that opencaching.us has some adoption. You'll see a lot of the open caching, the actual open caching, not the Garmin versions, do have a lot of adoption in places like Europe. There's always the Australian version, which is its own site. So there's a bunch of those sites out there that do have more regional adoption, but globally, geocaching.com is the dominant player, and they're the ones that have the most caches and the most players.
Exactly. And, they kind of dictate the sport at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're coming in on, 2 million active caches now?
It's going to happen this year.
Yeah, so actually I think they were projecting that it's going to happen this month even, not just this year.
Right.
So that's going to do it for this week. Come check out next week's show when we're going to talk with Northern Penguin about the Ontario Trails Project. Check out the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647 or by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2013 by Daryl Wanberg, all rights reserved.